So we have sample question number 9. This is simplify the expression. I'm going to do 2 problems here just because some people are going to get a positive one and some people will get a negative. And I just want to be fair game so that you can see both of them in action. But I kind of know that this is the combination guy. How do I know this is a combination? You can clearly see we have the power rule right here and we have a negative. So as soon as you have 2 rules, you can go right down to the combination rules. Remember, if you see 2 or more, we saw some problems had all 4 of them, but we definitely know this one has power and negative. So step 1, make sure every item has a coefficient, every item, that means coefficients, constants, and variables, have an exponent written. This has an exponent, this has an exponent, that doesn't have an exponent. So let's slip in a 1. Once you do that, then we can move on to step 2. Step 2 just basically says do the power rule. We're going to distribute that outside exponent to all inside exponents, and if you have any negative signs. There might be 1 or 2 of you who might have a negative 2 here. If that happens, remember, when you distribute to the negative, if this is an even number, the negative will go away. If this was a 3 and you had a negative here, just make sure you keep that negative in your final answer. For here, distribute to only exponents. Remember, not to the base itself. You can only distribute to other exponents or if there was a negative sign here. To distribute, you multiply. So 1 times 4, 4. Negative 11 times 4, big number, negative 44. And then 10 times 4, 40. No more parentheses. Next step, once we did the power rule, let's get rid of any negative exponents. Remember, is the problem written as a fraction? No. So we're going to put in a fraction bar for ours, then circle, and then switch the position of the ones that will have the circled exponent. Remember, switch that base. And then remove the negative once you switch the base from the exponent. So notice I told you that this is not a fraction bar, so we can just put it over 1. Then we're going to circle any negative ones. Boom. Once I circle, we know that anything that was not circled gets to stay where I found it. So this, found on top, stays on top because it wasn't circled. So it stays 2 to the 4th on top. This was circled, so found on top, now goes to the bottom. But when you switch the position, the negative will drop off. It becomes the opposite. Negative to positive when you switch the position of the base. This base found on top, but wasn't circled, so it stays on top. Okay. Next, it says step 4. Ask yourself those 2 questions. Do you have any like bases? If so, do you have more on top or bottom? And by how much more? But the question is, do you have any like bases? No. 2, K, J, no. So then what you want to do is this. Final step, see if there's any coefficients or constants that you can simplify. So I can't do K and J because they're variables, but I can do this coefficient, 2 to the 4th, 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. Remember, we can't touch this 40 and this 44. This and this have to stay because these are different bases. So this is your final answer to this problem. Let me write out one more, just to be fair. some people might get a negative exponent. But the steps are still the same, it just might seem a little more difficult when you have negatives. First thing that you want to do, we already talked about it, is make sure that every item has an exponent written. And I mean any variable, any constant, any coefficient. So this variable, yep, has an exponent. This variable, don't have an exponent, so notice I'm going to draw in a 1. This one, this is a coefficient. Still, got to put in a 1 there. Okay, so any number, any letter, make sure you have 1 written in. Step 2, to get rid of these set of parentheses, we're going to distribute this outside exponent to all inside exponents, not to the base itself. Exponent to exponent, exponent to exponent, exponent to exponent, and any signs. So notice there's a negative right here. This, even though it's a negative number, is still an odd number. Remember, odd numbers can be -1, -3, -5, -7. Because this is an odd number, that means this negative will stay. If this was an even, like a 4 or a 2, this would go. Because basically you'd be squaring this whole number, or to the 4th, whatever, like -5 times -5 disappears. But because this is -3 times -3 times -3, this is going to stay. Now, let's distribute by multiplying. We have y, -6 times -3, positive 18. 1 times -3, -3. 1 times -3, -3. And we know that the negative is going to stay. Now that we got rid of the parentheses, remember our next step is to get rid of those negatives from the exponents. Okay? Is the problem written as a fraction bar? No, I don't see any fraction. So you can write in a fraction bar, but then put it over 1. Once you do that, then you can circle your negative exponents. Remember, negative exponents, not negative coefficients, negative exponents. This one's positive, so I don't circle it. Next, see how we're going to move some of these items? Notice this y wasn't circled, so I don't move it. It was found on top, it's going to stay on top. But this x, he was circled. So he was found on top, but I have to switch the position. Once I bring it down to the denominator, then the negative will go away. This, gotta go. So the 3 is going to go down to the bottom. And we know this is going to be written as a positive. But notice this negative, he didn't switch. You might be saying, why didn't he switch? Because remember, this is only applying to the 3. We already did this to know that the negative stays. So that's the reason why these are treated as 2 separate items. So make sure you put the negative on top. Now we got this. We're going to see, do we have any like bases? Because if we do, we have to do those 2 questions for the product and quotient rule. I have a base of y, base of x, a base of 3. No. So I can skip that step and go to our final step, step 5. You know what 3 cubed is. Be careful. It's not 9, it's 3 times 3, which is 9, times another 3. I always get someone who just sees 3 and 3 and they say 9. No, it's 3, 3, 3. So make sure you write it out as 27x cubed. And then the top is still y, 18. And this negative, well, that's up to you. Some people just keep the negative on top, which is perfectly fine. Or some people will see that the negative is floating right in front, because that negative means it can belong to the top if you want to do it, or at the bottom. Either one works for me. A lot of times you'll see me put it just in the top anyway. But that's your answer.